Back here in Operation Basketball with another coaching legend, Jim Boeheim. Great to have you here, Coach. Just saw some of the highlights from last year.
Yeah, I like the first ones, not the last ones.
We keep ending on those last tournament games.
I don't know why we're doing that with every coach here.
Outside of UVA, it doesn't really work.
Watched the last game. That's nothing. Can't learn anything from that one.
In terms of your team right now, Tyus Battle's not there anymore. Frank Howard, when you guys were in Italy, I mentioned it in the tease before. That's usually a big trip for teams. How important was that for this group with you this time?
It was huge because we got 9, 10 new guys. I mean, the reason when you lose 4 starters, obviously, it looks worse than it is because Marek Dolezaj started the year before and played a lot, so he's a junior. Elijah Hughes started. He's a junior. Barama Sidney played a lot. So we have 3 juniors that played a lot. The problem is in the backcourt, we're sophomores and freshmen. And, that's always a concern. But we've had some great freshmen. Tyler Ennis came in and started. Tyus Battle started as a freshman. So we think these guys are really good players. And we have more depth than we've had in probably 7 years. And we have more shooters. We've been 14th or 15th in the league in three-point shooting 4 years in a row. And we still managed to kind of get through it and be a tournament team, but we have much better shooting. So I think all those things help us to be a little better.
Well, you could probably thank your wife for the DNA because one of those shooters has been your son as well. Did you expect him to play such a big role in his freshman year? He really came up big at points.
He's a year ahead of schedule. He started so slowly. People forget he shot 18% the first 10 games in the non-conference last year.
Somebody hasn't forgotten.
And I think his mother taught him some shot moves or worked with him or something, she says. And all of a sudden he shoots 40% in the league, which is obviously harder to do. And he probably won 4 games, 5 games that we wouldn't have won without him. And so he's way ahead of my schedule. I thought this year he would do that, but now because of that, he's actually ahead of where I thought he'd be this year, too. So I think he'll have a good year. He's not just a shooter. He can do other things, and there aren't that many 6'6" 2 guards. So I think he'll have a good year. But, our key guy is Elijah Hughes. People don't know how good, he was our 4th option last year and our 2nd leading scorer. That's pretty hard to do your first year playing. And he's way better this year. He's doing more things with the ball. He's getting the ball more. I mean, we went with Tyus Battle and O'Shea Brissett and Frank Howard. They were good. They were veterans. And, they got us to the tournament, and it was a fairly good year. But Elijah Hughes can do more things than anybody we've had in a while. So I think he'll help the younger guys.
Transfer from East Carolina, that's high praise. Obviously, you've seen a lot of guys play at a really high level. You mentioned O'Shea and Tyus, and their usage rate was high. A lot had to go through them last year. How different will the team be in terms of sharing the ball and sharing the burden to score?
Well, we went to them because that was where we had to go. We had no other options. This year we've got a freshman, Joe Girard, that can shoot it, Bryson Godin, who can shoot it. Obviously we know that Hughes and Dolezaj can play. We've got 2 6'11" freshmen that'll come in and give us some minutes. So we've got so many more weapons. And Jalen Carey, who had 26 points in the Garden and 14 points in the Garden early season, and then Frank Howard came back. You go with the senior, but Jalen Carey can play. So I'm not that pessimistic about our backcourt. I'm pretty optimistic about them. And, at this time of the year, I think you can pretty much say every coach is optimistic.
Hope springs eternal here.
After 44 years, you try to be a little realistic, too. And I think we have a good basketball team.
Coach, with the group you guys have, guys coming back, some new guys coming in, what are your real expectations for this season?
They're high because we had 4 games in Italy and we had 10 practices, so we're almost not mid-season, but we're well ahead of where we would be. And I think the ability to go on that foreign trip is great. The ability to work with your players for 4 hours that last session of summer school. So we not only had the 10 days, but we had 4 hours a week during that last session of summer school. It's a great NCAA rule. Along with giving our players meals is such a great rule the NCAA made because now they don't have to pay for board. They can take their board in cash and have spending money. It's a little known fact, but players with the cost of attendance and the board can have spending money now because we can give them dinner after practice. We can give them food during the day or a workout. So players are in a much better position I think we need to continue to do more for our players, but we don't want to do something that's going to create 2 players on the team getting a lot of money and the other 8 players like looking and saying, well, I'm rebounding, I'm doing all this, and I don't have a commercial. You know, I mean, we've got to find some way to get players money in whatever we can, but it's got to be on an equal basis somehow. And that's the dilemma. It's hard to figure that out. Everyone wants players to get more, but how do you do that and not make it a professional sport?
Good.
So, Coach, is it fair to say that with this NIL, the name, image, and likeness that everybody's talking about, is it fair to say that you're a proponent for a discussion?
Oh, absolutely. But when we did the food thing, we didn't realize that players now can put money in their pocket because we're feeding them. They still pay some for food, but they have $1,400 in our case of cost of attendance and board a month. So they have some cash. How can we augment that? What can we do? I think we have to also remember that there's 4,000 basketball players in Division I. 3,900 of them are happy to have a scholarship. I was one of those guys.
Yeah, I wasn't getting paid either. There's 0 shot.
I was really happy to have a scholarship and go through 4 years. And the 100 guys that are going to make it, they're going to make money. And it's fair to say Zion Williamson is making more money this year from his shoe contract than he ever would have if he'd have gone out of high school.
Absolutely.
There's no question about that.
No question.
So college is beneficial for everybody, even the top player, because he sets himself up for entry into the NBA. But anything we can do to make it a fair thing, like what was done with the food, it's the same for everybody. Everybody got the same thing. And how can we move forward with that? And I realize it's a little bit Pollyannish to say all the money can be pooled and given to the players from image. You can't do that because you're taking away one guy's rights. So I don't have the answer. You know, there's a lot of people working on it. I don't think the federal government or state government is the right way to go. I mean, I think they have enough problems of their own trying to figure out what's going on in this country and in their state. But somehow we need to move in the direction of doing whatever we can to keep it an even playing field for the players, that they all get what we can give them. We never dreamed we were giving them something really good when we said, well, we can augment their food package. That's been great. That's been a great thing. Now we have to see what else can be done.
You know, we got a guy here sitting at the desk. I don't know how much you remember my playing days of Dallin's playing days.
Definitely not mine.
Something tells me you remember something about this guy's playing days right here. What kind of player was Carlos?
Well,
Be gentle, Coach.
I don't know if we played.
I don't think you guys ever matched up.
But I had Carlos, you know, on the Olympic team, national teams, and the thing that always impressed me, he just came every day and he got his job done around the basket every day. And I don't think Duke's had a better interior presence in all the years that I can think back on. You know, you get old, you forget some things. But, you know, you think of Duke, you think of all the perimeter guys they've had. But, you know, I don't think they've had anybody like Carlos in the inside position.
Carlos, could you have played that matchup zone?
I paid him to tell me. I paid him to say that, by the way.
That's what that handshake was over there. Huh? All right, you too.
Just a handshake. That's all.
Let's get back to your squad here. This is a fun year because we're starting with conference games right away. Fun for us watching, not so much coaching, I'm sure. And you get the reigning national championship coming into your building, though. Anything change in your preparation given that situation?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, some years you start out with a tournament, which could be a really tough tournament. So I think by the first day, you have to be as ready as you can. Your team should improve during the course of the year. But certainly if you have veterans, it's a little bit easier to start the year off with a difficult game. You know, Virginia's as tough as anybody in the country to play against defensively. They're the best defensive team in the country year in, year out. So it's a tremendous challenge. You don't face that in practice, no matter what you do. And they have really good players and a great coach. They're coming off a national championship. So it's a great challenge, but it's also, that's what you're in college for. That's what I tell our players. This is what we want to to do. We're in the 20-game schedule era, and you just have to get your team ready and go play. It's very challenging, and we have a good non-conference schedule as well, so our players will be challenged this year, and I think because they're good players who are young, they'll learn what they have to do to be successful in this league.
Right.
Coach, 44 years doing this, a legend, a pillar in the game. We touched on the NIL stuff and fair pay to play, excuse me. But where have you seen the game evolve most with the players? As we look behind, a lot of them are on the cell phones now. Social media has become a big thing. Where have you seen the biggest change from year 1 at Syracuse to year 44?
You know, the biggest, well, there's huge changes going back that far. We don't even want to talk about it. But even in 10 years, I think the biggest thing that I see, there's no value put on college education. It used to be, well, I can come back if I've got 3 years in or 2 years in. But now it's like 1 year, well, I can come back. But, you know, it's hard to come back. Right. And I don't think players value the education enough, because it doesn't matter how good you are. When you're 36 or 7 years old, you're going to be done. Right. So it's good to have something to fall back on. And it doesn't have to be a degree in mechanical engineering. Just a good, solid college education in the liberal arts. I think we just don't value that anymore. And everyone thinks they're going to the NBA in 1 or 2 years. Guys that are never going to go there think they're going to go there. And when you think that way and don't do your work, it's a problem. And what I see over the last few years, more and more guys aren't making it. First-round picks are out in 3 years.
Yeah, sure.
More and more every year. The percentages are growing every year. I don't have them at the top of my pocket here, but I know the percentage is big. So I think that's the biggest change. We all thought, well, if we can play basketball, good, but let's get our education. That's not the thinking today. And I think somehow we need to change that over the next few years, because if kids in high school get this idea they're going right to the NBA, they'll stop doing their high school work. They'll get to be seniors. They won't be able to go to college. And they won't be good enough to go to the NBA. The NBA has a limit. Each team has 17 guys right now. So how is a kid coming out of college who's a second-round choice going to make that roster? The first-round guy is going to have trouble. The lottery guys are going to make it. Everybody else, it's going to be hard to make. So I think we've got to go back to valuing the education, the time, even if it's 2 years. You know, Michael Carter-Williams was with us 2 years. He's back taking courses now, and he's still playing. So let's try to value the education a little bit more. I'd like to see that.
2 years with summer school, you're really almost there. You can come back, and it's not that far to getting your degree. So that's not.
You can get over halfway. Michael got over half. You're not supposed to release this thing, but I don't think he'll mind because it's positive. We got well over halfway.
Wow, that's great.
Years.
That's fantastic.
That's what we're looking to.
Coach, really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot. We'll see you starting off the season against UVA. Coming up, national champs in the Carrier Dome. First game of the season here on ACC Network.